And good morning and welcome to VSA Capital 5-Minute Morning Miner. It's Monday, the 25th of July. Schools have all broken up. Everybody's on holiday. And we're still going, Paul, aren't we?
Yes, we sure are.
Yeah, we sure are. Not there's a lot of news around today, and commodity prices are all pretty soft still. But I guess that's actually what we need to a certain extent to try and bring inflation down. But at some stage, value will be seen in the mining sector, I think. But I think there's value in the mining sector already. I think we're probably on the bottom. Anyway, there's not a lot of news this morning, I think, Paul. But have you got anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, we thought I'd mention this thing that came out after we reported Friday, and that's the Ioneer has done a deal with Ford. Ioneer being TSX listed clay lithium developer in Nevada, and their deposit at Rhyolite Ridge, there in western Nevada, now has Ford as an upcoming off-taker for that deposit as well. Ford's going to take a portion of the early years of production here in order to fill up their pipeline that they're trying to fill as far as a target to be producing 2 million EV vehicles by 2026. So they announced a bunch of different deals last week, of which Ioneer was more or less near the last one that they announced. This deal that on a 5-year term for 7,000 tons of lithium carbonate would represent about 34% of Ioneer's first 5 years of production. So it's a nice a bolt-on for Ioneer for sure as far as, but I also want to point out too, is if you haven't noticed that all of these lithium clays now are getting off-taker deals, whereas if you remember, Andrew, we struggled to convince people about Bacanora's viability as being commercially producible, from 2018, 2019, and I think we're now seeing that that's been vindicated.
Well, I think that's right. We always were very bullish on Bacanora, and the Chinese got an absolute steal. They're buying it way, way too cheap, as is often the case. But I think that's also why, it's slightly different, obviously, but the micas in the English China clay pits down here in Cornwall actually are going to come into play. But it's Imerys who control them all. People get confused thinking that maybe it's Cornish lithium or British lithium. Actually, it's basically all owned by a tiny, tiny piece by Imerys, the French conglomerate, and they are not about to give it away cheap.
That's right, because it's the same deposits that produced historically for a couple of centuries now in English China clay, and the mica was the waste.
Yeah, it's all just sitting there. You can go and see it. So it'd be very easy. Well, nothing is easy to produce, but relatively easy. But it's all in the hands of Imerys. Okay, I noticed today, it wasn't out on the RNS news channels, but I saw other piece of news that Altin Gold has managed to get its application for its additional credit line of $40 million from the Kazakh bank has been approved. That's a lot of money for a company that has a market cap of only just over 20 million pounds. Actually, the interesting is Altin Gold. I mean, we used to for some time ago. It doesn't. No one researches it. No one really follows it. But it seems to be doing all the right things now, Paul. It's probably incredibly cheap, but it's run by the Idar family. You don't often get to speak with them, but it looks like a very cheap mine. I'm not quite sure. I don't know if you have a view, Paul.
I would say that now that the mine seems to be producing according to its potential, I think people just haven't paid much attention to it because it underperformed for so many years. It was the former AIM listed company more than a decade ago called Hambledon Mining. It's the same deposit. Like I say, there's probably just people haven't paid much attention to it.
Yeah, I think that is. So there's a little potential gem, shall we say. Okay.
Speaking of Kazakhstan, I'd have to bring up the news from East Star Resources here, which is London quoted. They've just begun the drilling program on the Apmintis property, gold property there in Kazakhstan. This one is a historic discovery, but it was never brought into compliance as far as Western standards is concerned. So there's some awfully good grades in the old historic information, and all this is going to be drilling into is things like 63 meters at 4.5 grams gold in a historic number, just to verify, in fact, that these things were, in fact, accurate. 14 meters at 2.5 grams, 5 meters at 5 grams, those kind of numbers.
So it's all happening in Kazakhstan. The trouble is, I don't know what the appetite at the moment is for actually investment into Kazakhstan, obviously, because Kazakhstan sits rather in between Russia and China, and clearly Russia, the sanctions against everything, and China, certainly the battleground at the moment for the two potential new prime ministers of the United Kingdom are very anti-China, it would appear. And of course, this whole China rhetoric, the sort of Cold World War II, is creating interest where you've got very strong deposits in the West, which comes back to Cornwall again. Every road leads to Cornwall. Actually, not every road does lead to Cornwall. Sadly, only the A30 leads to Cornwall.
You do have
and that's one of the problems.
You do have to remember, though, that Kazakhstan sits there on that Silk Road, and the whole Belt and Road scenario is dependent upon Kazakhstan remaining open for trade.
I'm sure it will. I'm not knocking the country at all. I'm just saying that it is a problem when it comes to appetite for investment. So anyway, we'll see. Right, I think that's about it, Paul. Before I start just waffling on, boring everybody, we'll call it a day then. We'll speak again tomorrow.
See you then.